Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities Behind Black Business. And tonight, we're going to have a part two discussion with Madeline Sanders and the Harriett Tubman Initiative. Madeline and Preston were guests on our show about 11 months ago, and she talked about her business and what they're doing as far as handling clemency issues and wrongful incarceration issues with prisoners here in the state of Illinois. And this is a follow-up from a discussion that we had last week as well. Okay, Madeline, I need you to position your phone and try to keep it in one place.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. You are fine right there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. So last week we had Troshawn McCoy, who is a member of the Marquette Four, who were wrongfully incarcerated. Troshawn McCoy was 17 years old at the time, and he was the victim of the racist policies of the Chicago Police Department and John Burge. But he was vindicated as John Burge got caught up in a lot of scandal, and they requested a evidentiary trial because there was no evidence that was actually showing to prove that they had committed the crimes that they were accused of. And as a result, they were released and there was a $50 million settlement. And so this whole issue of imprisonment has had a very significant impact on our communities, financially, emotionally. Just when you come to Chicago and you look at the Black communities in Chicago, this is one of the reasons that they look like they do. So, Madeline, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So, first of all, family, as you know, we're a nonprofit organization, and we are working here at Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities to circulate dollars in our community. We want you to support our businesses, which is one of the reasons that we bring you this podcast every week. We work very hard and very diligently to get guests, to bring guests to our show. And so you can get to know the people who are working in our community with businesses, who these people are, and many other individuals who are working hard to do some of the same work that we're doing. We have a lot of work to do. Our community is going through a lot of changes. We're being under-resourced. There are just so many problems that we're having. And so we have many people out here working on different fronts to keep us afloat. And so that's our mission here at Repair, Restore, Grow Black communities, and to circulate the dollars. And so one of the areas that we provide some extra support in is for our bookstores. We do have a number of Black bookstores here in Chicago. They appear to be flourishing. You can go to our website at rrgbc.org, where we have bookstores listed. And we choose a bookstore every month, and we feature that bookstore for a number of weeks. And we ask that bookstore to select a book for our book giveaway. And our bookstore of the month is frontline.com. frontline.com. And if you go to frontline.com, Brother Sekou has a plethora of reads for you. And the book that Brother Sekou selected was My Life in Ethiopia's Progress, 1892 to 1937. This is a 2-volume book. It's about the autobiography of Haile Selassie. Um, he it's about his ascension and the modernization of his country, um, and his ascension politically. And in the second volume, they talk about the Italian occupation. And we do have a winner of the month for this book, and that is David Boykins. So, David, congratulations. We will be contacting you. You will receive both volumes at our expense. We will pay for the book. We will pay for the shipping. We ask that you go to frontlinebooks.com and support them and share their website with your friends and other people that you know, because we want to help Frontline bookstores, all of our bookstores, and circulate the dollars. Okay, so congratulations to David. And we also ask that you go to Save Black Bookstores at Chicago, Save Black Bookstores Chicago at change.org, and sign our petition, because we want our local um, politicians to look at giving some support to our bookstores. This happens in a lot of other municipalities, and we're still working to get 1,000 signatures. So please go to Save Black Bookstores Chicago at change.org and sign our petition. And we also support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. They are located at 55th and Wentworth, and they're in the shopping mall. They have been there for over 20 years, providing all kinds of services to our community. We have our money in many banks. We have our dollars in the big banks. But how many of these banks actually give back to our communities? We have businesses who are struggling to stay afloat. We have entrepreneurs who want to open up businesses, and they aren't able to get the resources from the local banks and from the political system here to open up their businesses, to help them make payroll. This is ridiculous, because this is not something that should be happening. So Madeline, we just lost her from the screen. I'm sure she will come back. Let's see what happened to Madeline. Okay, there you are. Okay, Madeline, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Okay, all right. So we want you to support the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. They have many products, many different types of loans, financial literacy classes, and all you have to do is open an account at the credit union. This is a credit union who is giving back to our community. This is a credit union who cares about you. And in order for any type of financial institution to stay afloat, they need us to open up accounts. So please go to the Southside Community Federal Credit Union and open up an account. I'm sure Greg Brown would be very happy to see you there. Okay. All right. So Madeline, asked you
Yes.
to come on tonight because we wanted to go to your part 2 segment, where we're going to be talking about, we want to talk about the Harriett Tubman initiative and what you have been doing so far. And we also want you to talk about we want to talk about the purpose of prisons tonight. Why do we have prisons, and what are these prisons supposed to be doing, and how effective are they, and how have what they're doing been affecting the Black community? And then we want to talk about the impact of these prisons on our Black families and our Black communities. So those are some topic areas that we want to cover. tonight. So, Madeline, I want to give you the floor at this point to have an opportunity and talk, let our audience know who the Harriet Tubman Initiative is, what you've been doing in terms of clemency and addressing wrongful incarcerations.
Thank you so much, Denise. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to uh, your audience about the some information I would say I should that I will provide about the prison system. It's a very, very extensive topic because in the United States, um, there are about 5 to 6 lanes, different lanes of how people are involved in one way or another in the criminal system. We have state prisons, we have federal prisons, we have what I call the little jails, like the facility over in Chicago that's located on Roosevelt Road and has been there for some years. That facility deals with juveniles. Um, then there are work release centers, there are transition centers, there are um, there's a couple of more places right now that don't come to my mind, but all total, I one time took the opportunity to count about how many different lanes relating to the criminal system that exists. And it's about 6 or 7, and when you talk about the number of people involved in one of those systems, it's about 7 million people in this country that are in one of the lanes of the criminal system. The largest population is in are in the state prisons throughout the United States. And one of the big tragedies is that if you go to any prison in this country, you'll see anywhere from 60 to 65% Black men.
Mm.
Let that get into your mind and think about that. 60 to 65% of Black men in our overall population are in the state prisons in the United States. I've been to a number of the prisons by way of contact in Illinois, and I do know that one way that I was very surprised initially was when I would go to some of the prisons and I was just seeing black men, black men, black men, and I started inquiring what's going on here. The prisons are full of our black men. Now, with that said, I always tell uh, inmates who are locked up, remember what prisons were created for. And this goes back to the 19th century. Prisons were initially created for law enforcement people, which were called sheriffs, to chase down runaway slaves and return them dead or alive to their slave masters. That was the purpose of why prisons were created. And I
Okay.
tell folks today that that culture has not changed. That
Mhm.
culture of disrespecting individuals and treating them like they're animals. The culture has not changed, which is why so many times we hear of police shooting individuals in the back and doing other things to them and basically treating them like they're animals. So we have a very serious problem in this country with respect to the entire prison system. Um, Also, keep in mind that this ties into the 13th Amendment. A couple of years ago, I decided to look at the 13th Amendment, which, by the way, the 13th, 14th, and 14th Amendment, especially those amendments, were created to guarantee Blacks the right of citizenry in this country, like all other individuals have. But when you look at the 13th Amendment, the language in essence says that once you commit a crime, you are labeled a felon. And it does not say that once you serve your sentence time and come out of prison, that you are restored as a full citizen of the United States. The language does not say that. It says that once you are convicted of a felony, that's it. So, what is the implication? Once a felon, always a felon. That's the implication. So, keep that in mind.
So that whole,
That
so
language
so so that whole, is one of the purposes they say is to rehabilitate and to reintegrate, to reduce recidivism. All of that is a farce when it comes to most people who are incarcerated, people from our community.
is a good point. And keep this in mind how the prison system has evolved. 70s, I'll start, go to that decade. Uh, the national prison population was about 700,000. At that time, you had a larger population of whites. There also were lots of programs for individuals to rehabilitate themselves. You could get an associate degree, a bachelor's, um, even a master's degree while in prison.
Hmm.
There were programs for you to go into the trades. There was a plethora of programs in the 1970s. But guess what happened? In the late 1980s, President Ronald Reagan got legislation passed dealing with crack cocaine, which, as we know, many of us will recall that during that time, crack cocaine was raging all over the United States. There were dealers and there were users. And so Ronald Reagan got legislation introduced and passed. Um, it was the Anti Drug Enforcement Act. I'm not giving you the exact wording, but that's the essence of it. The Anti Drug Enforcement Act. And what that act was designed to do was if you got caught with 5 grams of crack cocaine, that was the targeted drug. That was an automatic 5 years in prison. Automatic. What did that do? That started an explosion of the prison population. But guess who was really targeted? Black men, Black women, because they were the largest users of cocaine.
Hmm.
When that happened, you started seeing the prisons with Black people. And a lot of the programs that existed started being were withdrawn. Started seeing programs being withdrawn. And then in 1994, Bill Clinton, our wonderful Sax, got the anti-crime bill passed because there were a lot of politicians who were saying, we got to do something, we got to do something. So much killing, so much violence going on. And there was a lot of it because a lot of the people who were selling the drugs, they were fighting over turf. Now
Mhm.
imagine that. You're standing on the corner saying, this is my area, my territory. And you don't even own that area. You don't own that corner, but you were claiming it as your corner. And if someone from another corner came to that corner, that person risked getting shot and killed because he was in the wrong spot at the wrong time. So all of this was going on. Now, with that anti-crime bill, ironically, some black politicians tried to get social programs included in that legislation, but they were rebutted. There were politicians who did not want social programs included. There was a midnight basketball program that was included. I recall that. But by and large, legislation, the anti-crime legislation, it was about filling up the prisons. And what happened, for example, 100,000 police were added to law enforcement agencies all over the country. 100,000. You had billions of dollars that was spent also to build more prisons. That happened. More programs that had been in place were once again removed. And then along came the truth in sentencing statute. It was at the federal level, and of course, state governments followed suit, and they added the truth in sentencing law, which requires minimum and maximum sentences. And that's what got us to mass incarceration. That's why today we have millions of people in the criminal system. The system has grown by 400%. Let that marinate with you. 400% since the 1980s. And it has not diminished. It
Now
has
you know,
continued.
Madeline, you have to say in every situation here in
Yeah,
America, follow the money trail, right? And so
that's right.
as they were building these prisons, where were they building these prisons predominantly?
Oh, I can tell you, you look in Illinois, case in point, except for the prison that is in Joliet, which is called Stateville, all of the prisons, and I'm going to say something about Stateville in a second, all of the prisons are outside of Cook County, going to all the way to the southern tip of Illinois. So there are prisons all the way down to the southern tip of Illinois, outside of Cook County. And that's where you will find all of the individuals in located in those prisons. Now in Stateville, the old prison that was there was torn down for the most part. And I just got this information. Governor Pritzker is having a $90 million brand new prison built in Stateville. There were people who protested about that because they were saying, why are you wanting to build a brand new prison? We should be talking about reducing the number of prisons and putting new industries in all of those counties where there are prisons located. And by the way, out of 102 counties, there are 102 counties in Illinois. 92 of those counties, 92 have a prison. Let that
Now,
marinate
with
with
these prisons opening up in these different areas, those people who live in those areas, this is creating an economic
you.
engine
Yes,
for those people who live in those
exactly.
areas. And then
Exactly.
also, with you having
exactly.
more people imprisoned. I was speaking with someone the other day, and they were telling me about the dollars that are spent when you're sending someone money, someone who is incarcerated, you're sending them dollars. They're spending those dollars typically within the prison itself. And so you have industries that are making money off of the dollars that the prisoners are spending. So it's cash cow
Exactly.
for these industries that are making money off of the prisons. It's a cash cow for those people who reside in those communities where those prisons are.
Exactly.
Everybody's making money off of it. And then you have people
Exactly.
investing in prisons. And so
Exactly.
this whole
That's
part
right.
about, and there was a point where the prisons were designed to supply labor for public works and industries, often
Yeah.
exploiting
Yeah.
marginalized populations. And we won't say marginalized populations here. We're going to say Black communities, Black people,
Yes.
are being
Yeah.
exploited, and people are making, everybody's making money off of
Oh, and by the way, guess how much money a person earns when they have a job in the prison? The wage per hour on the average is 17 cents. Now, Caucasian guys who are in prison, they earn 65 cents per
it.
hour.
How is
A
that?
whopping a whopping
So
65
how is that
cents.
happening?
Well, someone and all of this goes to
Hmm.
policies that are established in by the hierarchy, like the Illinois Department of Corrections. Now, a lot of the policies via the Illinois Department of Corrections occur by way of legislation that gets passed by the General Assembly, and the statutes that come out of that legislation, that of course has been going for decades, determines what kind of policies can be established in this case. And I find it very, and I'm going to say it that way. The Illinois Department of Corrections is comprised primarily of Black
That's
politicians.
right.
So I wondered, how is it that Black politicians allow a number of these statutes that you see on the books now to pass through the House by the governor? How do statutes, why is it that they are even allowed to pass through the House? And I'm thinking, but these are Black politicians sticking it to you, our own people, and allowing
Hmm.
this to happen. Why is that? Case in point, the Truth in Sentencing Law, which requires minimum and maximum sentences. So, as a case in point, if you're accused of killing someone with a gun, you could get on murder. That means 30 years in your possession that you utilized to kill that individual. That's another 25 years. So you got 30 plus 25. That's 55 years. Now, a judge has the option, a judge has the option of letting those two sentences run either side by side concurrently or consecutively. So you got 30 years or for the murder, and 25 years for the gun usage. So you could end up having to spend 55 years in prison, which really is a death sentence, depending on when you went in prison. Or the judge could say, well, I'm going to have these two sentences run concurrently. So you got 30 years and 25 years running side by side. A lot of times now, what judges will do, they'll have those sentences run consecutively. So you're spending all those years in prison. And then you got more people coming in, more people, more people, more people. So now you got a pile on of so many people in each of those prisons. That's how we got to mass incarceration, because of those excessive sentences. Before blacks started, the number of blacks going into the prison system, before that number started really ramping up in the late 80s because of the crack cocaine legislation, a person could commit a murder and they might spend 15 years max in prison at 50%. So you got 15 years and you could get out in 7.5 years for killing somebody. During that time, there was no gun enhancement statute, but that was brought into the picture when more blacks started coming into the system. So you see how all this stuff has been working. And now, guess who gets caught up in all of this mess, as I'll call it? The family. When you go in prison, you're not making any money.
That's right.
More than likely, you won't have a job at 17 cents an hour. You won't even have a job because there are very few jobs that are offered.
And then there's
So you rely,
and then
you
there's
got to rely on your family.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, you have to rely on your family, you money to a put in a fund, a trust fund for you, so that you can buy some food items in the commissary, so that you can have money for soap and other personal items to keep yourself clean.
Aren't these items provided in the prisons? Soap, and toothpaste and detergents and things like that is not
Well,
provided.
there are some things that are provided, but if you want the better products, you're going to pay for them. That's the way that goes. Food
So
items
this is putting an economic strain on the family because
and
the
the
family's
family.
paying the family's paying for phone calls,
The
right?
family's paying for phone calls,
They're paying
and
for
then
the commissary costs that you're talking about. They're paying for legal fees. Uh,
right now you have
draining
now,
the limited resources that the family already has.
and when you talk about black families, that's typically the case. And as we well know, in this country, we come here in the 19th century, 18th century, we did not voluntarily come here. Our ancestors were forcibly brought to this country. And so going forward, we've had that issue to decade. And even in terms of, you look at the end of the century, we've been dealing with discrimination on every level that you.
Okay, you're breaking up, Madeline. Uh, but while you're trying to get back in here, um, Madeline, you're making some very important points. And one point here that I want to make is the lost opportunities. Like the young man Troshan, he was 17 years old. He had
Mhm.
aspirations of going to college. He wasn't in any gangs or anything
Mhm.
like that. And these were his aspirations. And when they put him in prison, all of his opportunity to own a home, to have a family, to complete his education, to start a business, 50, you said 60 to 70% of our men in prison lost opportunity and a lack of
Exactly.
input, the lack of input that should be in our communities are
That's
not
right.
there.
That's right. And think about
Because
it, Denise. Think about it to the audience. Get caught up in the criminal system, 18 years old, and you get a sentence of 55 years, 55 added to 18. That's 73 when you come out.
mm,
What can you do as a productive citizen at the age? Yeah, there are some things that you can do. You shouldn't say your total life has been wasted and gone, but your ability to have children at best, your ability to work, questionable. And I can tell you, Denise, when you go in prison, you damn well better be in decent health. Because if something,
okay, we've lost Madeline. Madeline's had a uh, difficulty with connection here, but she's bringing some powerful information here about what's happening with the prisons and the impact that the prisons are having on our community. So let's see if we can get her back here. Okay, Madeline.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So you're talking about that. And then I also mentioned, you look at the loss to our communities and the gain to other communities and just how much money these industries that are part of the prison system, how much they have gained and how much we have lost.
and you know
I'm
what
sure
the sad thing
it's
is?
billions and billions of dollars.
Exactly. And you know what the sad thing is? And almost all these counties think about when you drive, once you get out of Cook County and you start going to Southern Illinois, it's mostly rural.
Mhm.
Chicago is the biggest city in Illinois, and this is where all the predominant people live. It's all
Okay, Madeline, we're having a little difficulty understanding you. Um, okay, all right, go ahead. Let's see if we can keep going here. Okay, why don't you go back out? Why don't you go back out and come back in?
let's
Madeline,
see.
Madeline, can you hear
I'm gonna
me?
do I can hear
Okay,
you connecting.
okay, Madeline, we need you to go back out and come back in. I don't know, maybe you're okay right now, but we didn't understand anything that you just said.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you disconnect and come back in? I'm going to make a few more points here. Um, we're looking at the fact of the households being disrupted, the loss of the breadwinner, uh, the reliance on now public assistance, instability in housing, where many people end up homeless, emotional stress, the impact of the children and stability of the family itself, that now that someone in the family is no longer there. but in prison. The health costs. Now that you do not have the second person in the household, we're looking at poor health care and higher medical expenses. The community itself is being damaged because it's removing billions of dollars annually from our communities by incarcerating the people. The last figure I saw was over $370 billion annually being lost. And then we wonder why our communities, or we don't wonder, but this is why our communities look like they're looking. And then you
It,
add on other people coming here from other countries and setting up businesses in our communities, and they're extracting dollars from the people that are here, you know,
yeah,
and they're not giving back. So
yes,
everyone is
yeah,
taking and taking and taking. It is a wonder. We have to say, we must be a powerful people, because it's a wonder that we're still able to stand with all of this, everything being taken, taken, taken. That's what's happening. And it's stunted our economic growth. It's reduced our consumer spending. Um, it's lowering the tax contributions to the community. As you mentioned, unstable employment, and a loss of intergenerational wealth. You have nothing to pass on to your children, and they have nothing to pass on to their children. And so this is all due to racial disparities uh, with Black America, decades of discriminatory policing and sentencing. And so I know that the Harriett Tubman initiative has been working on clemencies, trying to help people to appeal and receive leniency from the crimes that either they have committed or have been unjustly accused of, and especially dealing with the wrongful incarcerations. So that's what the Harriet Tubman initiative is all about. So let me see if I can bring Madeline back in. Um,
yeah,
Okay, Madeline.
okay.
All right. So we're talking about all of these things that are going on, and how is the Harriet Tubman Initiative dealing with some of these issues?
Well, what we do, Denise, is we have a couple of divisions that dominate our business. We prepare executive clemencies for individuals who want to get their sentences commuted. So whatever that person's sentence is, if it's 30 years, 40 years, we will prepare an executive clemency when that individuals request of us. We are an LLC, so there's a fee for the service. We try to be not try to be, we are reasonable in terms of what we charge um, as a business, because the need, I can tell you, is tremendous for individuals who uh, want an executive clemency. I don't know of any person who has gone to prison and said, "Oh, I just love this environment so much, I want to live and die here." I don't know anybody like that. So the crime that we see going on out here in the street, with the smashing and grabbings and the carjackings and the burglaries and the shootings and all of that stuff, when these individuals get caught up in this criminal system, and if they land in prison, which a lot of times will happen, I can tell you that within 5 years, they'll be wanting to get the hell out of there. Okay. Because it is a very toxic environment. And when I say environment, a lot of guys have told me that in their cells, there's mold in those cells. And I mention that because I housing and urban development, if they knew I'll put it that way. If they knew there was mold in almost every prison throughout Illinois, uh, I know that the governor would have to shut down a lot of those prisons, which means the population would automatically have to drop. And we know that mold, if you when you inhale it, it will kill you. When I had a mortgage business, you remember when we had a mortgage business, if a person if the property that the person wanted to buy had mold, that property had to be cleaned and sanitized before a person was even allowed to go in the property. So imagine now all of these guys who are in these prisons having to live with mold in their cells every day. That's horrible. It's inhumane and it's cruel. Um, there's so many things about the prisons that are inhumane, that are disrespectful, that you can earn any adjective, negative adjective that we can conjure up is representative of a lot of these prisons. It's unfortunate.
Now,
And
Madeline,
yes,
Madeline,
ma'am.
you mentioned in another conversation that we had off the air about the fact that the families really don't know what to do, or how to
Exactly.
address this issue. They try to be supportive. They pay money. They may come to see the people, depending on how long. Sometimes, if they're incarcerated for a number of years, sometimes the parents, or family members start to dwindle off in terms of coming out. Uh,
Dying. They die
yeah,
off.
to die off. Some become traumatized by the whole situation,
Yeah.
uh, creating a lot of emotional distress. But what advice would you give to people in terms of how to best support these individuals when they're in prison?
I'm going to say this. And number one, I'm going to tell your audience this. I'm writing two articles that I know I'm very quite certain, I'll put it that way, that I can get published. One is for individuals who get caught up in the criminal system. How do you be an advocate for yourself when you get caught in, when you get arrested? What can you do? You're dealing with the police, you're dealing with a prosecutor, and you're going to be dealing with the judge. How do you deal with those individuals? What do you say? What can you do? Because at the end of the day, if you can avoid going to prison, you're going to do that. You should want to do that. Don't wait until you get convicted and sentenced, because now what was the size of a mouse? I'll use that uh, as an example. Now you're dealing with a lion, so you are in the lion's
Can you
jaw.
share some of that information tonight?
I'm going to put that information in an article that I'm writing. I'm just about done with the article on how to be an advocate for yourself. The other thing, though, is, Denise, the family needs to know how to be an advocate for their loved one. I'll give you a case in point. There was an individual who is currently locked up. He had a private lawyer that the family paid for. And when the case, there was a jury trial involved. And as it was coming to the end, where there was going to be uh, the jury uh, giving a decision about whether this person was innocent or guilty, the lawyer told the family one day that he had lost all of the documents pertaining to that case via a flood in his basement. Can you imagine that? He came to court.
So he should have had multiple copies of his documents.
He should have had multiple copies. And then and this happened in 2013, by the way. He should have had a computer with those documents on the computer. Now, when he came to court and made that statement, the judge should have said, well, this case cannot go forward. It couldn't go forward if the lawyer didn't have any documents. So that was a cause for dismissal of the case. It was. And that's what should have happened. But what happened? The guy got convicted and sentenced to 50 some years. I think it was 55 years. That should not have happened. But the family did not know how to deal with that lawyer. And so the whole matter just went right on, and their loved one ended up convicted and sentenced, and he is sitting in prison right now.
So, what is one of the biggest mistakes that the family makes in situations? And what is one of the biggest mistakes that the individual makes in this
Well,
situation?
I'll use myself as an example, and this goes to a person's education also. Keeping in mind that most people, and this is another tragedy, most people, especially black men who end up in prison, do not even have a high school diploma. If they, Denise, they would think, I'm in this situation. I need to know how to be an advocate for myself. So, number one, I've got to find out about this system. I've got to research what I'm dealing with. What kind of knowledge do I need to have in order to be an advocate for myself? Because otherwise, you're batting zero because you don't know what to do, who to talk to, or nothing. Same thing with the family. If I have to say, I'm going to go to the library and get information on how to deal with prosecutors, how to deal with judges. If the police did not charge me correctly, or they got somebody to come and lie and say I did something I didn't, how do I deal with that? If I got to go get some magazines, talk to some individuals, read, in other words, you got to do the research to know what you have to do in order to be an advocate for yourself. I'm not going to assume that when you get arrested that immediately you know what you're supposed to do. Most people have no idea. They don't have a clue about what to do. So yes, it requires some research, serious research, which and one thing about in connection with that, I'm glad that Illinois passed the no cash bail law so that people have an opportunity to actually do the work to prepare for the advocacy part of their case that they must work on. Because if you're sitting in a jail cell, you cannot do any work in terms of advocating for yourself. You can't. So those are two articles that I'm working on now, and I'm going to get that information out to the public within the next 3 weeks.
Mhm.
It'll be out. I'm going to be contacting magazines about submitting those articles of how to be an advocate for yourself when you get arrested. Same thing with the family. How do you advocate on behalf of your loved one when he or she is arrested? And please, for God's sake, don't talk about, well, I'll wait until it's all over. No, you don't want to wait till it's all over. You want to catch that monster before it's over because you want to avoid ending up, I call it, in the lion's jaw. Keep that in mind.
Well, how can people get in touch with you and follow what you're doing and then get a copy of this article once you put it out? How can you be contacted? The Harriet
Well,
Tubman Initiative, LLC.
yeah. Our business phone, our phone number is 312 221 3011. I'll repeat that one more time. 312 221 3011. Now, our business hours are Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 8:30 a.m., 5 p.m. Saturdays, we're open from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, we do a lot of appointments outside those times at different times, because a lot of times we get calls from people who are desperate, who just uh, they're feeling when you get caught up in this criminal system, it just drains you emotionally, mentally. It really takes you down, and so you just need someone to undergird you, to help you wade through all the mess, so that you can figure out how to deal with it. That's our business phone number. We're working on a website, which is going to be ready within the next 60 days. We'll have a website up. And as far as the phone number, keep that number in mind. And I would say within the next within the next 60 days, people can call that number, our office, and I will gladly send you a copy of the articles that we have prepared. They're going to be well written, and you will appreciate the information that's contained in them. Um,
Okay.
so,
And we need to be sending letters out to our political officials based on statements that you said earlier, in terms of being more proactive and putting pressure on them about some of these policies that they're voting for. We have,
yeah,
what do we have? 19? How many state representatives do we have? Uh, I know it's at least 19, and
okay,
we have an equal representation, if not more, in the city council. So
yeah.
where are our black caucuses? Where are these people who say they're for black, but then you sit here and you vote for these policies that are having such a damning effect on our communities? And I
And it's
think
tragic.
that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and it's tragic, Denise. It really is. When you look at a lot of the statutes that are on the books, as I mentioned earlier, it is absolutely tragic about a lot of the stuff, a lot of the statutes that have been allowed to be passed through the General Assembly in Illinois alone. And every time I see something and I say, how could this have happened for so many people, so many thousands of people to end up in prison? And by the way, the prison population and state prison population in Illinois, the last statistic that I saw, um, 2018, 2019, 2020, in that range, we're talking 32,000 people, just about at that number. And easily a third of those people are wrongfully incarcerated.
Mm,
And Chicago has spent, as of this past June, it was on the news, $125 million
mhm.
in settlements, and another almost $1 billion is about to be coming down the pipe that Chicago alone has to pay for settlements of individuals who were wrongfully incarcerated. And
And this is the when you say Chicago, taxpayers, homeowners.
exactly,
That's who's having
exactly,
to foot this bill. And
exactly.
there needs to be a vote for reform in the police department,
Yes,
for a lot of these wrongful cases. The policemen need to be taking
exactly.
out some insurance, and there needs to
And you
be
know what?
there
I'm
needs to
glad
be
that
some
you mentioned that,
consequences. There needs to
Denise.
be some
I'm glad
greater
you mentioned that.
consequences, and
Yes.
responsibility
Let
on
me say
that
this
end.
in close. Let, yes, I'm gonna say this in closing.
Hmm.
The state's attorney that was in that office, Kim Fox, she started some practices to begin to fix the system so that it wouldn't be as so corrupt. She was working on that, but it was just so much that had to be done. But then she did not run. She ran and won in 2 terms. Then she decided not to run, I guess, because she was tired, worn out from all of what she was dealing with. So now we have a new state, and there's an article that came out 2 days ago, or a day ago, in the Chicago Tribune, that state's attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, has weakened the system that was being created to end the corrupt policing that has been going on, that has been causing innocent people to end up convicted and sentenced for crimes they did not commit. That system that was being created has been weakened, which means now you're going to have more people going into prison and more people going into, of course, initially the jails. And by the way, jails are where you are initially detained until you get convicted and sentenced. If you get convicted and sentenced, you move from the jail to being in custody of the Department of Corrections, and now you're going to prison. And that's the way that's set up.
Well, I think what I will end with, I think it's time for Black people to not be have such a great allegiance to parties. We have to look at issues. We have to look at the issues at hand and look at the parties from that perspective.
Yes.
I think for too long, we get caught up with I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. You know, we have issues that need to be addressed and
Yes.
can be addressed in one party or another party, but we have to put those issues on the table. Madeline, I want to thank you for coming tonight. Some
My
very
pleasure.
pertinent information that you gave out. And family, please, if you know someone that needs these types of services, dealing with clemency and wrongful incarcerations, please give the Harriett Tubman Initiative and Madeline Sanders a call. And I want to thank you for coming tonight. And David Boykins, again, congratulations for being our winner for our book giveaway this month of the autobiography of Haile Selassie. And you have a good night.
Thank you.
Remember, support Black businesses.
Okay.